My name is Marcus Reed, and about 2 years ago I worked the night shift as a security guard at a mid-sized office building just outside Dallas, the kind of place that looks completely normal during the day but feels like a different world after midnight, especially when you're the only one there, which I always was, from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. Just me, a desk in the lobby, a wall of security monitors, and a landline phone that almost never rang. And for the first few months, nothing unusual ever happened. My routine was simple. I'd do hourly patrols, check each floor, make sure all doors were locked, then come back down, sit at the desk, maybe scroll on my phone or watch the cameras and wait for the next round. And honestly, the silence didn't bother me at first. It was peaceful, predictable, until one night a little after 2 a.m., the landline rang, which immediately felt strange because nobody ever called that number, not at that hour. And when I picked it up, there was no one speaking, just this faint static and what sounded like distant movement, like fabric brushing against something. So I said, "Hello?" a couple times, but got nothing back. And after about 10 seconds, the line just went dead. And I remember sitting there, staring at the phone for a moment, trying to decide if it was just a wrong number or some kind of system glitch. And eventually I brushed it off. But about 15 minutes later, it rang again. Same number, same silence, except this time I was sure I heard something else underneath the static, something rhythmic like breathing, very faint but definitely there. And that was enough to make me uneasy. So instead of ignoring it, I checked the internal directory because the system displayed where calls originated from, and what I saw didn't make sense. The call was coming from extension 214, which I recognized immediately as one of the offices on the second floor, and that's when I felt the first real wave of discomfort because I had personally locked that floor less than an hour earlier, and there shouldn't have been anyone in the building, but still, I told myself there had to be a logical explanation. Maybe someone stayed late, maybe I missed them. So I grabbed my flashlight and headed for the stairs, trying to stay calm as I made my way up. The building felt different at that point, quieter than usual, like the kind of silence that feels like it's pressing against your ears. And when I reached the second floor, everything looked normal at first glance. Lights off, doors closed, no movement, but as I walked down the hallway toward office 214, I started noticing small things, like one of the doors slightly ajar when I was sure it had been closed earlier. And the air felt colder up there, not dramatically, just enough to feel wrong. And when I finally reached 214, I saw that the door was closed, but not fully, just barely, not latched. And I remember standing there for a second, listening, and that's when I heard it again, the same faint sound from the phone, like slow breathing, coming from inside the room. And I can't explain why, but instead of calling out or opening the door right away, I stepped back and pulled out my radio, considering calling it in. But before I could, the sound stopped completely, like whoever or whatever was making it had suddenly become aware of me. And the silence that followed was worse than the noise because now it felt intentional, like something was waiting. And after a few seconds, I pushed the door open slowly, shining my flashlight inside, and the office was empty. Chairs pushed in, desks clean, computer off, nothing out of place. But the phone on the desk was off the hook, just lying there, gently swaying like it had been moved recently, and I just stood there, staring at it, trying to process how that was even possible. Because I hadn't heard anyone leave, Hadn't seen anyone on the cameras, and there was no other exit from that room besides the door I was standing in. And that's when my radio crackled suddenly, making me jump, and the voice from the dispatcher came through asking if everything was all right, because apparently they had just received a call from my building, from my extension. But when they answered, no one spoke. And hearing that made my stomach drop, because I was nowhere near the desk phone downstairs at that moment. And as I turned to look back at the hallway, I realized something even worse. Every office door along the corridor was now slightly open, just a few inches each, like they had all been nudged at the same time. And I know how that sounds. I know it sounds exaggerated, but I had walked that exact hallway less than a minute earlier, and every single door had been closed. And the longer I stood there, the more it felt like I wasn't alone on that floor. Like there were people just out of sight standing behind those doors, watching and waiting for me to do something. And that's when I made the decision to go back downstairs, not running, but definitely faster than I wanted to admit, trying to keep my composure as I reached the lobby again. And the first thing I did was check the monitors, expecting to see something, anything, but every camera feed looked normal. Empty hallways, closed doors, except for one, the second floor corridor camera, where every door was clearly visible and completely closed exactly how they were supposed to be. And I remember just staring at that screen, feeling this disconnect between what I had just seen with my own eyes and what the cameras were showing. And before I could even process it, the landline rang again loud enough to make me flinch. And this time I didn't want to answer it, but I did anyway, slowly picking up the receiver. And for a few seconds, there was nothing, just silence. And then I heard it clearly, not static, not breathing, but a voice, low and calm, saying just one thing: "You missed one." And the line went dead immediately after. And I stood there frozen, trying to understand what that meant until it hit me. I hadn't checked the basement during my last patrol, something I occasionally skipped because it was just storage and maintenance. And the thought of going down there after everything that had just happened made every instinct in my body tell me not to, but at the same time, I couldn't ignore it. So after a few minutes of hesitation, I grabbed my flashlight again and headed for the basement door. And as I opened it, I immediately noticed the smell, damp and stale, stronger than usual. And as I started down the stairs, the beam of my flashlight shook slightly in my hand. And when I reached the bottom, I saw it. The door to the storage room at the far end was open, and there was light coming from inside, which made no sense because that room didn't have automatic lighting. And as I slowly approached, I could hear movement again, not loud, just subtle, like someone shifting their weight. And when I finally reached the doorway and looked inside, I saw a man standing there, facing away from me, completely still, like he had been waiting. And for a moment I couldn't speak, couldn't move, until he slowly turned his head just enough to look at me over his shoulder. And the expression on his face wasn't aggressive or panicked. It was calm, almost familiar, like he had seen me before. And before I could react, he stepped back into the darkness of the room, and when I rushed in after him, there was no one there, just an empty space. No other exits, no places to hide, nothing. And I left that job the next morning and never went back. And what still bothers me isn't just that someone was there, because maybe there's an explanation for that. Maybe someone got in somehow. But what I can't explain is how the calls kept coming from inside the building even after I left. Because 2 weeks later, I got a message from the guy who replaced me asking if I had ever noticed anything strange during the night shift. And when I asked why, he said the phone had been ringing every night around 2 a.m., and every time he answered, the caller would just breathe for a few seconds and then say, "You missed one."